Hi, welcome to Season 3, Episode 4 of The Weekly Wave. I'm Matthew Lyons.
And I'm Aaron Johnson.
And our special guest here today is local business owner, Mr. Richard Rosen. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing
Fantastic.
Congratulations on your show.
Thank you very much.
So we brought you here today to talk about your many businesses. I mean, you're owner of a realty group. I mean, you own 2 restaurants, and also, shameless plug, but you have a local beehive in your backyard. Let's start off with the restaurant. Do you want to go with the first question? Or?
Sure. So I feel like a lot of restaurant owners, they dream of owning a restaurant. Was that always like your childhood dream? Or did you just decide one day, like, you know what, I'm going to open up a restaurant?
You know, that's a great question. So when I was younger, everybody wants to own a restaurant. I mean, I think every guy every boy, they've all wanted to own a restaurant. I happened to work as a young boy for the Wakefields, who owned the famous Toll House restaurant in Whitman when I was like 13, 14 years old. And then when I went on to college, I actually took, and a lot of people don't know this, restaurant hotel management in college. And I was heading down the path to go into the hotel business, to work at some hotels. Things happened, it didn't work out. And I ended up back in Whitman working with my dad and got in the real estate business. But as time went on, living in Whitman, you know, I always had that thought of opening a restaurant in the back of my head. And I had researched it because everybody said, you know, the one thing that Whitman needs was a good restaurant, and they need an Irish pub. And an Irish pub can be many different things. It's more about decor than anything. So what initially started out as a real estate deal turned into be McGuiggan's Pub in Whitman Center. You know, I had researched opening a restaurant for years. And, you know, I had toyed with it. I almost bought a restaurant in Whitman. And then I went into this building one day, which now houses McGuiggan's Pub, and I walked in and I said, this is it. It's a perfect building. And the rest is history. So that will be 11 years in December that we opened.
Wow.
So it's been a long time. And then last year, I built and opened the patio at McGuiggan's, which is a totally different menu, totally different type of building across the street. So I own 2 restaurants in Whitman Center across the street from one another.
It's fantastic.
So where did the name and kind of like the ambiance of McGuiggan's Pub come from?
So it's my wife's maiden name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not a lot of people know. A number of people ask, you know, where did that name come from? It's a great Irish name, but that's where it came from. It's her maiden name.
Awesome.
Yep.
Interesting. I never would have guessed that.
Yeah. I know, it always kind of floors people like, oh. I mean, it wasn't, you know, that unique. It was her name.
Yeah.
So, but it fit very, very well.
So is she from like Irish heritage or like?
Well, I mean, her grandparents, I think, were probably from Ireland, and, you know, she's just in an Irish family.
And now her maiden name is famous?
Now her maiden name is everywhere. It's everywhere.
So obviously due to COVID, a lot of restaurants have shut down. And obviously it's had a terrible impact on the economy. But what have you learned from that shutdown, if anything, that will help you in the future? Or even like in your real estate business, like what have you learned that you could apply?
So in any business that you were in, whether it's a restaurant business, a real estate business, or the widget business, you need to be flexible at all times. You need to be not opposed to change, and you need to be able to change quickly. You need to be able to change what you do on a dime. We had to do it as a restaurant. It's this COVID, I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible what's going on. And we, at both restaurants, I'm scared to death of getting it, and I'm scared to death to give it to someone. And I want to make sure that our restaurants are socially distanced. Everybody wears masks. We sterilize all the chairs when people get up. But you have to be able to change on a dime. You have to adapt. Because we literally, on March 17th this year, we were just shut down. It was our busiest day of the year, St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yeah.
Is our busiest day of the year, and March is our busiest month of the year. And I was standing in the restaurant on March 16th, standing next to a guy, and I'm watching the TVs, and I said, we're not going to be able to open tomorrow. And we weren't. So on March 17th, one day, we stopped dine-in operations in both restaurants, literally closed my new restaurant, the patio, just shut it down. I mean, it was terrible because all these employees, we have 40, 50 employees, were all without a job. And the pub, we stayed open the entire, well, we have never closed, but we were closed for in-house dining, but we immediately went to takeout. So again, we just had to change real quick on a dime. Your revenues are down, things are down. We changed our hours of operation with the takeout, and we were closed for a number of months for dine-in. The patio, which was just shut down, was closed for a few months, and you know, when it got close to reopening, we had to redo the inside of the building and take out tables and chairs and put up sneeze shields, and we actually changed the menu, we changed our hours, and we reopened. And then we got that restaurant up and running, and then reopened the pub. Again, sneeze shields, we didn't change the menu, social distance the tables and stuff like that. So it's really, really important that as a business person, you have the ability to be able to think quick and change quick. I mean, literally overnight, we shut down. And it was pretty tough. I mean, it's not great now, but
Right.
I mean, it's pretty tough. Like, you know, not long ago, we just had our hours cut. You know, we were able to open at about 50% occupancy in both places. And we were staying open till like 11 o'clock, but now they just came out and said, well, you know, you've got to cut your hours. We stop serving food at 9 o'clock or 9 to whatever it is, and everybody's got to be out. So, I mean, that hurts as well, but you got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it and move on, you know? So we're fortunate that I own my properties as opposed to most restaurateurs rent their properties. And those are the ones that you know, are in a lot of trouble and will be in a lot of trouble.
Because you're still paying those like rent and all the utility fees, and
Correct.
it's just a sad sight to see. But I mean, going off like kind of like a sadder, like more of a topic. What was the inspiration for your menu at McGuiggan's? Because I feel like a menu like that's like your focal point. That's the focal point of your restaurant. So how did you decide what to put on there?
So McGuiggan's, the pub, is a comfort food type of menu. And it has, being an Irish pub, you have to have certain things in there. You have to have a shepherd's pie.
Yep.
You have to have a bangers and mashed, fish and chips. So I actually designed most of the menu because I'm a really simple eater, and it's a lot of comfort food. We have like 13 entrees, bunch of really good appetizers, and I wanted different appetizers. Now the patio is totally different. I kind of let my daughter, who runs both restaurants, her and some of the managers, we had meetings. I never met with anybody doing the menu for the pub. I just kind of did it, said, yeah, this is how I think it ought to be. You know, we changed some things, but we ran with it. But the patio is totally different. The patio is more of an upscale, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's just it's a totally different menu. It's all American food. It isn't like, you know, there's no Italian theme to it or anything like that, but it's just totally different foods and appetizers. So that one was designed by a lot of people.
Cool.
All right, so we've talked about COVID, talked about your restaurants. Now, to talk about the honey and the beekeeping, because this is fascinating to me. I've never met a beekeeper before. And how did you get involved in this? Did you know a beekeeper and you kind of saw like a glimpse of how it was run, or did you just decide one day, I want to get involved in the bee business?
No, it's actually kind of funny. So it was one of those crazy things that I got interested in bees. And I studied it, and I did know a couple of beekeepers. And a friend of mine lived in Duxbury, and he had a beehive. So we chatted several times, and I started to read books and do some research on honeybees. And one day, he needed help he had an accident where he broke his leg, and he needed a hand putting the bees the day that you picked up the package of bees and installing them in the hive. So he asked me to go pick them up, and I was horrified. So I picked up the bees, I brought him down to his house, helped him install them. I went, yeah, I could do this. So I did some more research, and then the following spring, I bought, you know, the stuff to build 2 hives, and they say you should start with 2. In case one goes bad, you still have one, and if one goes bad, and you can figure out what you did wrong. So I started with 2. I now have 9. It is just an amazing hobby. It's more of a hobby than anything. I mean, you could never make money. It's not like a business. I mean, it's a hobby, and it's really fun. The life of a honeybee is one of the most amazing things that you've ever looked at in your entire life. So from him, basically got me started. And then what happened was the first year, I did really well with honey, and I had this honey. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then the following year so I went from 2 hives to 3 hives to 5 hives to 7 hives to 9 hives. And it's a lot of work. I'm not going to 10, I can tell you that. If anything, I'll go down a little bit. But then I ended up with all this honey. It's like, what am I going to do with the honey? And that's another whole aspect, is the extraction of the honey from the hives. So learned how to do it. And now I extract the honey, I bottle the honey. And I had so much of it, it's like, what am I going to do with it? So we now sell it, because, I mean, there is nothing better than pure honey. There's a whole bunch of things that you can use honey for. So I sell it under, of course, the McGuiggan's honey. It's pure honey. I mean, literally, that was born and raised in Whitman, just a couple of miles up the street. And yeah, so I bottled it, and so we raised the bees, and it's fascinating. And I think that you learned prior to us doing this that I actually have a TV show. Mm-hmm. It's called The Buzz Around Bees. And we've been doing it, Mr. Tachi is my producer. And I got to be honest with you, the show was his idea. It wasn't mine. And we've been doing it for 3 years. And we've won a couple of awards, believe it or not. And the life of a honeybee, it's fascinating. And you could never learn enough about it. Because a honeybee, everybody's afraid of getting stung. You know, bumblebees, everybody would be afraid of bumblebees. Bumblebees don't even sting you.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be scared to death of a bumblebee, and now it's like, you know, I'm in my yard with my gardens with flowers and stuff, and the bumblebee will be like sitting there next to me, looking at me, going, "Hey, what's up?" And a honeybee won't sting you unless they know that they're going to die when they sting you. So their goal is not to sting you. It's mostly because you swat it, is when you get stung. And I get stung, you know, once a year or something like that. But,
Oh, wow.
you know, nothing bad. And but it is fascinating.
Where
Do you
can
have any-
someone go to buy this?
So we now sell it at McGuiggan's Pub and the patio at McGuiggan's, as well as we sell it at a couple of other locations. We've had people grab me and want me to sell it in their store, so we sell it at Duval's in Whitman and Lipinski's Fruit Stand in Hanson. I mean, everybody loves local honey.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I have people that come into the restaurants that have never eaten there, they don't drink, but they just come in to buy the honey because they've heard that we sell honey. So, and I have, you know, after doing it for several years and having 9 hives, I have a lot of honey.
Yeah.
So,
Do you need like licenses or permits to have that beekeeping?
not in Massachusetts. I think technically, you know, it's funny because when this pandemic started and I had nothing to do, I took a master's beekeeping course online. And there are some states that you need to be licensed. And frankly, you should have to learn something about having beehives before you get them.
Right.
Because it can be dangerous. And I know people that, you know, oh, my kid's going to do a beehive. And, you know, they're going to pick up their bees and they don't have any protective equipment. It's like, you can't open a beehive without having your face covered. It's very dangerous. So you should know stuff about it before you start to do it. So it's a good question, but no, there are no requirements.
And for my final question, for someone who owns so many businesses, how do you manage your time so efficiently?
You know what? Another great question. In order to be successful, you have to be really good at time management. It's all about time management and organized. You have to be well organized. And I'm just organized and have, you know, a good control of my time management. I'm really not as busy as it seems. I got plenty of time to play with bees and work out my gardens and stuff.
Well,
But
thank you.
you really do need
Thank
to
you
do
so
that.
much for coming on. This was a great interview.
Great. Glad to be here, and congratulations again on your show. And I understand you're on Chronicle, and that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for a brand new episode of The Weekly Wave.
Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at either the Green River Gazette or the Weekly Wave.
Stay safe.
Goodbye, everyone.